Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tango Banter. This is the number 66. I am Yelizaveta. Thanks so much for joining me. This week, I've decided to talk about clothes. I love clothes, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who obsesses over her outfits for different tango events, different nights of the week, different times of the month even, because clothes are a pathway for us to explore who we are, as well as to feel a certain way in the dance in tango. And since we have the LA Tango Marathon coming up, I have been thinking about what is going to be my wardrobe. There are some new items that I recently bought that I'm going to be debuting. I hope that I get to see many of you, those of you listening. If you're coming, do let me know. Send me a message. I'd like to see you in person. And if you are still on the fence, or if you decided that you want to come, but you just forgot where to get the information, and maybe you forgot that you also get a free t-shirt when you register if you use the discount code LAMEOW23. That's LAMEOW 23. So I'm reminding you here. The links are below in the show notes. Check out the details. I hope I see you there. And you'll get to see the result of my multi-day thinking about what I'm going to wear. Let's see what I come up with. So I was thinking about clothes because, as I mentioned in my newsletter this week as well, I recently wore a tutu to a malanga, and it's this silly piece of clothing that I own. And this was only the second time I've ever worn it, and only the first time in public. And it had such a great effect on the night, and I really enjoyed dancing in this piece of clothing. But I had to fight some demons in order to not pull out of it, because I realized for me, I'm always wondering in the back of my mind whether what I'm wearing is okay. And somehow there's this constant dialogue going on about what I look like and what I'm wearing, and is it working to my advantage or not. So I used to date someone who's also a dancer, and he used to say, the way I dance, what I wear really impacts the way I dance. And he would talk about it repeatedly, and every time he would talk about it, it was this sort of phenomenon that he was aware of, that he really wanted to explore. And at the time, I just thought, oh, I think he's just being vain. I think he's just really into himself. And I kind of dismissed it, but it stayed with me. And later, when I began to lead, I came to understand what he was talking about. And it's interesting to look back and reflect how what I wore over the years of my life and my stylistic explorations, how they informed and contributed to who I was at the time, and how those things changed based on my values and my ambitions. And somewhere along the way, I came to see clothing and a personal style as a pathway to self-expression, which is not a new thought. This is why fashion exists. But for a long time, fashion was something that exists out there for me, like as a viewer, as a person outside of the world of fashion. I just get to look on to this world that I don't belong in. And when I started tango, I kind of realized that I ended up being in that world in a different way, not necessarily by being part of the fashion world, but by asking myself questions about personal style and what do I want to look like and what do I want to emulate and how do I want to come across. The first iteration of this for me, this exploration of who I am through clothing, started when I was a teenager. And back then, I was in a small school in Dallas, Texas. I had just moved from Russia to Texas, and I was going through tremendous culture shock. Part of me really wanted to fit in to the American culture, so I immediately decided to hide any sign of being Russian. And in terms of the way I dressed, I became very tomboyish. I was very athletic. I played tennis when I was in high school, and I really wanted to look athletic. I wanted to look strong. I owned no makeup. I wore no makeup. All of my bras were sports bras. And I think on a daily basis, outside of my school uniform, all I wore was sweats and t-shirts, and all of my clothing was extremely functional. And I really shied away from anything that looked extra feminine because I didn't feel that I was feminine. So a lot of the girls around me were very petite and very pretty, and they wore makeup and they got a lot of attention. And I always was yearning for that attention and wanting to be noticed, but really feeling like I was kind of a clumsy, chubby kid and I didn't have the femininity that they had. So I believed that about myself, that I just was not feminine. And I proceeded to go down that rabbit hole for a long time where the clothes that I wore, they were supposed to kind of hide my body, and that was the purpose. And as an artist, I did get creative with that, and I really liked asymmetrical clothing and interesting patterns or interesting shapes that clothing created. But I really didn't want to be sexy. I didn't want to have a traditional image. And maybe I wanted it, but I just didn't believe I could have it. But it made me feel very uncomfortable. I was very other to that, I felt. So I proceeded with that for quite some time. And I went through different periods. There was actually a period where I only wore black as well. And it was at a time where I somehow decided that the easiest way for me to come across as being fashionable and cool and not have to wear a lot of different outfits was just to wear black all the time. So that's what I did. And I did it for about 6 months. And I also had very dark black. I had black hair that was very, very short. My inspiration was Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So it was really severe haircut and black, everything black out, black eyeliner, very dark features, dark clothing, black, you know. That was a phase. And there are people who still remember me from that time period because that's actually what I looked like when I first came to Portland. I arrived at the tail end of my black phase. And when I really dove into tango, I started changing. I started changing what I wore. And it was terrifying. Part of me wanted to change. I wanted to try on this image of the sultry, sexy tango dancer wearing a pencil skirt with some ruching on the back and the form-fitting dresses that really show off your features. That to me was such a different world from where I knew how to operate. And when I finally decided to explore that part of myself, it was really scary because I thought people would laugh at me. I remember the first time that I wore a Roxana Vincelli dress, which is a brand of dresses that I think most tango dancers know if you've been around for a while. They're maybe not as known now, but back in the day, everybody knew a Roxana Vincelli dress. There was just no other dresses like that. And so I got my first Roxana Vincelli dress in Buenos Aires, and it was reversible. It is, I still have it. It's black on the inside and red on the outside. And when I put it on, I felt that I was naked. I was absolutely terrified. And I went to the Malanga and I just was completely convinced that somebody's going to tell me that I am being inappropriate. And that's where it all started. And then little by little, I embraced it and started to experiment and push the boundaries a little bit and play. And I was also living in Portland, and Portland is so body positive, and there's so many opportunities to kind of let go and explore what it is to be a human animal versus having some sort of a prescribed image that you're following. So I was exploring that for myself. And I was also dating someone who was really attracted to that. So I really wanted to be attractive to him. And that fueled a lot of my choices. So I started wearing things that I knew that he liked. He even bought me clothes that he wanted me to wear. And I, little by little, became the thing that I thought that I couldn't be. I became this sexy vixen wearing hot things and going out and partying and just kind of embracing that part of myself. And within tango, it was constantly updating my wardrobe with things that showed off my legs or my butt or appeared sexy or some skin. And it was fun. As I said, it was a fun period for me, but I started to notice that it was difficult. It was difficult because it was work. It felt like work. I wasn't enjoying it because a lot of times it was very uncomfortable. And this sensation of not knowing whether I have sweat marks showing on my butt because I'm wearing a skirt and I'm sweating and there's sweat dripping between my thighs as I'm sitting, and this worry that I'm going to get up and people are going to see a sweat mark on my butt and I'm going to be really embarrassed. That sensation. Or wearing a skirt with a slit or a dress that's slightly short and being worried that my underwear is showing. And in terms of embarrassing moments along that line, I've talked about how in one of the very few performances I've ever done, I was wearing a dress that fit me fine until I did a lot of vigorous movement and many boleos and ganchos and my legs being thrown around. And in the video, which does exist, but it's not published anymore, you can see what is a butt cheek. Okay. You can see it. Was it embarrassing? Absolutely. But it was kind of like this feeling that was always there. I was always nervous about things like that. And to add to that, when I was in Buenos Aires, dressing provocatively also meant that you got a lot of attention in a very vocal manner that was very persistent. And it was happening anytime you're walking down the street, people are hollering at you, catcalling from their cars or from the opposite corner. So that way of dressing to me contained that. So yes, it was fun to like dress up and be all sexy, but it came with all of these other things that were sort of getting in the way a little bit because it made me nervous. I was nervous. I felt like I was prey sometimes. And I'll never forget, I frequently experienced this in Buenos Aires when I'd be going home, and I lived pretty far from the tango venues. So I would take the bus and had to walk from the bus stop a ways to my house. And it's like 3 a.m. It's not necessarily like the ideal time for a young woman to be returning home by herself. So sometimes I'd be aware of all of these young girls who are coming home late, and they're very, very young, and they'd be like maybe 15-year-olds, and they're so cute, and they're wearing very provocative clothing, and they have these huge platform shoes on, and they're inebriated, and they're kind of, it's hard for them to walk. They're kind of like stumbling on it. And to me, I would see it and I would think, gosh, if they had to run for their lives right now, they couldn't. Like, they literally would not be able to run away if they had to. Somehow that was on my mind. For me, as I examined my choices of clothing, a lot of times it's like, yeah, this clothing is really attractive and it's sexy and it's getting the attention that I want it to have, but it's uncomfortable. It's rubbing me the wrong way. It's scratchy. I can't breathe. There's all these things that might be happening, and I'm saying yes to all of them because I want to appear a certain way and I want to be attractive in a certain way. And that's what I started having a problem with. I started to question that in myself, as I have done in the past. So it was this transitional place for me for a while. And I remember it culminated in one of these moments at a milonga towards the end of my time in Buenos Aires. And I was watching the dance floor, and there was this young woman dancing. She had these beautiful long legs, and she was wearing shorts that were so short that I couldn't stop watching her because I was just like, all right, there's going to be a crotch shot any minute. I just, like, my eyes, I couldn't look away. It was just one of those things that you can't stop watching because it's so provocative. And I thought to myself, yeah, wow, look at her. And she's getting to dance with that guy who's really a good dancer. And I thought, gosh, is that what I need to do? So this was also at the same time when I was really getting discouraged with tango in other ways. So it all coalesced with me really giving up. That night as I watched that girl, I just kind of had this sinking feeling where I was like, I give up. I can't do this. Like, I can't keep pretending that I enjoy wearing stuff like that and showing so much skin. And granted, there are people who love doing that, and I am not against it as a principle at all. And, I lived in Portland and I did attend the naked bike ride 3 years in a row. So, I'm not necessarily saying that it's wrong to be interested in wearing clothing that's very provocative. Like, some people love it. I just realized for me, it just was work. It was not something that came from a place of wanting to express myself. It came from a place of, I want to get more dances. I want to be more attractive. So I'm going to wear this because that's obviously what's getting more attention. And that's what I was not okay with anymore. And to me, that felt like a failure because in my mind at the time, I really felt like unless I dressed that way, I would not get the dances that I wanted. And I had spent so much time working to prove that I could be that and working in different ways to create that image. But once I sort of realized I couldn't, I had to also accept the possibility that I would not get dances. Like, I had to come to accept that. Looking back on it now, it's like, wow, that's so silly that I would even think that just because I would not wear provocative clothing, I wouldn't get dances. But I think that belief had so much power over me, and it kept driving me to do more and more, to expose more and more, to try different things, to be more daring, to do things that scare me. Uh, and and eventually it was like, wow, this belief is really cornering me. And I'm not really doing this because I feel like it. It's just because I'm afraid that if people really saw me the way I like to be and wear the things I like to wear, that they would not accept who I am. So I had to come to this place where I was like, you know what? Forget it. I give up. I give up the whole pursuit of trying to be this certain kind of dancer. And I came back to Portland and decided that I really was not going to be dancing anymore. And then it was also at a time that I was moving to LA. So when I moved to LA, I wasn't really planning on doing tango. I was really feeling quite uninterested in it. Even the music, I wasn't listening to it. But when I eventually got invited to go and I started going, I remember I had a very strong conviction that I was going to go, but on my terms. That if I was going to go, I was going to wear exactly what I want to wear. I'm only going to wear the makeup that I want to wear. I'm only going to wear the clothes that I want to wear. And it was sort of profound because I wore pants, which is mostly what I wear these days. On occasion, I'll wear a tutu skirt to a milonga, but 99% of the time I'm wearing pants. And I started going to milongas without makeup sometimes. Like I stopped wearing makeup for a while. My shoes, I stopped wearing tango shoes. I stopped wearing heels. So I would wear sneakers. I would wear Toms. I would wear yoga clothes. And it's kind of like I returned back to my teenage state, that sporty look of like, I don't care to look good kind of thinking. And it took a long time for me to start caring. But what was the most amazing part of this process was that I got so much good dancing. It felt paradoxical that now that I cared so little about how I came across and whether I was going to get dances or not, that now I was actually getting more dances, more quality connection with people than I did before. And I was wearing stuff that wasn't that attractive. I even was thinking to myself, like, my style was all discombobulated because I wasn't wearing heels anymore. And the skirts and dresses, like, you have to have a particular shoe to go with that. So I didn't have that, and that bothered me. So then I was just focusing on wearing pants and retired all my dresses. And so it took a long time for me to start finding a place that I felt comfortable, where I'm not sacrificing the priority or feeling very comfortable in my clothing, like being able to breathe, being able to move really easily, being able to sit down and get up or stretch, like being able to squat. I know it's not like, we don't think of that as a sexy tango move, but you know, when you're at a milonga for 3 hours, your back starts hurting, and I want to be able to move. I want to go stretch. I want to be able to sit down on the floor. So if I choose to wear something that doesn't allow me to do that, it's, you know, it's a trade-off. So I'm aware of that. So my clothing, I feel, had to negotiate for a long time. And I had to really experiment with what my image was going to become, because I went into this, what I considered to be feminine, extremely feminine look of the tango dancer, with the kind of sexy vibe of the butt skirts and the form-fitting dresses. And in one fell swoop, I kind of gave it up. And what was left is just some pants and some tank tops. And now I didn't feel feminine at all again. So I was doing a lot of experimentation, and it was really interesting for me to observe how much my outfit was dictating how I felt on the dance floor. And there would be times that I would put on an outfit and feel great, and then get to the milonga, see myself in the mirror, and immediately not like it. And then the rest of my night would be crap. Like, that's happened as well. At some point in my mind, there was an idea planted that being sexy and being comfortable are two opposing concepts. As a woman, I had to prioritize one over the other. And I don't think I'm the only one. Heels are a good example, right? Heels, they look good. They are not comfortable. No matter how good you are at wearing them, it is still more comfortable to wear shoes that don't have heels. It's just mechanically easier for the body, because we were meant to be walking on the ground with heels on the ground. So that's a fact. And with this transition for me, as I began to give up these certain qualities of judging myself and how I appeared based on the sexiness factor, the more I leaned into this feeling of, I want to be comfortable and I want to look good. And I want to look good to myself. I want to feel inspired myself first. The more shift I noticed in my dance. You know, sometimes you could be wearing a trash bag and people will compliment you on how you look. And you have to believe them. I've had this happen to me so many times. Just the other day, I was going for a walk, and I looked at what I was wearing, and I said to myself inside my head, I was like, "Oh, you look like a hobo. You're wearing these baggy pants, which I've been into these days, and my boyfriend's fleece that's oversized, and I have this mismatched colored scarf that doesn't go with anything." And I went for a walk, and I was like, "I don't care." And I'm listening to music, and I'm having a great time just walking. And this person stopped. I was passing them and they stopped. And as I was passing by, they looked at me and they were like, "You're so beautiful." And I was I was thinking in my head, well, I said thank you. But in my head, I'm like, "Are you kidding? Do you see what I'm wearing?" But it does happen quite a bit, that I think the real attractiveness in the body, at least the way I perceive it, it might be different for you. And I would love to hear what it's like for you, how you think about these ideas. But for me, the body at ease is the most attractive. In terms of the shape, sure, there are very pleasing shapes of the body that we tend to be attracted to, that Victoria's Secret and companies like that exploit, perhaps. But in reality, especially in dance, I find myself drawn to people and to bodies that have a lot of freedom of movement and feel very comfortable in their skin. People who really are at ease with their bodies. And in that context, it doesn't matter what they're wearing. It just comes across as beautiful. So my desire to appear feminine, and I'm sure for men, there's an equivalent for that. And I'm not really speaking as much to men in this episode, but I know that a lot of men will resonate with these themes. So I think they are universal themes, not just gender, but there's definitely different beliefs at play and different components, different challenges. When it comes to the desire to be feminine that tango really pushed in me, I now realize that the ideas of femininity are changing quite a bit. And what used to be feminine can still be considered feminine. However, there's new ways of exploring that and finding that. And that's where tango can be a place for us to explore that. And that's what I started using it for. To me, choosing what to wear and being mindful about my outfits, or getting creative with my makeup, or trying on a different color, a different look, it's become part of the dance experience. And the reactions that my outfits create, or how I feel when I dance in my clothes, has become a really important creative outlet for me that wasn't there before I made that switch and that commitment to just finding my own style. So whereas at first, I think it's really cool to dive into this image that's been given to us. Tango comes prepackaged a lot of times when we think about what it means. You say tango and people think a woman in a red dress, a guy in a tuxedo, and a rose in the mouth. That's still very much part of our consciousness. And that's still very much the image of tango that we are born into when we first start. And it's fun to play there and explore. And for many people, they find their expression in that world, and they find a lot of creativity within that image. But for many people, that image doesn't fit, or it's not very comfortable. And there might be other options. And I guess the goal for this particular episode was to perhaps encourage those of you who are feeling like you want to put your foot down and say, I've had enough. I'm done. I'm done wearing heels and I want to start wearing flats, but you might be afraid. You might be afraid that if you make that change, that you might not get the dances that you want. And I hope that this discussion, this little banter, can be a little token of encouragement for you to dare to step into that and to try it out, to try out a new piece of clothing, to do something that you've wanted to do for a long time, to retire items that you don't really feel passionate about and to try something new. I think it's very rewarding to go there. We can use what we wear to fit in. We can also use the clothes that we wear to break out of a particular mold. And both are very valid and they're very important. So for those of you who've dipped your toe into the ready-made image of tango and you're finding that it's too narrow or too boring, or you're just feeling like you need something new, then allow for that to happen and don't worry about not getting the dances. For me, it's been a very empowering experience to use clothing as a way of continuously recreate myself. It's really helped me phase in and out of different parts of my life. And the way I dance now and who I am as a dancer, even the vocabulary that I choose to do, how I execute the movements, how I execute my baleos and my ganchos, all of that is informed by what I'm actually wearing. So I'm curious to learn what impact clothes have had on your dance and how you think about your wardrobe in relation to your dance. You can join the conversation in my private group. The link to that is in the show notes. And don't forget that on a weekly basis, almost on Fridays, I do a live banter inside my private group so you can actually join the conversation in real time and contribute. So I hope to see you in the group. I hope to see you at LA Tango Marathon, and we will banter on next week. Ciao.